"Lucas, I've made up my mind. I accept your proposal." On the other end of the line, Lucas Kingston's voice was filled with surprised delight. "Clara, am I dreaming? You're really willing to come to Paris and build a life with me?" Clara Rivers murmured a soft, "Yes." "Wonderful, Clara. I'll get the visa documents ready for you right away. You just need to go to the embassy for the interview, and it should be processed within a couple of weeks." Lucas couldn't contain the excitement in his voice. The girl he had loved for 7 years had finally agreed to marry him. Clara agreed and ended the call. She walked slowly to the floor-to-ceiling window. The setting sun bled across the sky like a fresh wound. She couldn't help but think of the call she'd received from the prison yesterday, the cold, impersonal voice informing her of her father's death. Her father, locked away behind those high walls, had probably not seen a sunset this beautiful in years. Clara quietly returned to her maid's room. It was tiny, only about 65 square feet, containing a narrow bed, a small desk, and no window. Most of the space was taken up by several boxes. Clara knelt and slowly began to sort through them. They contained all her memories with Ethan Hawthorne, photo albums, a doll he had given her, and a stack of love letters that still made her blush. 25 years of knowing each other, condensed into a few small boxes. At the bottom of one, Clara found a velvet box. She opened it gently, and the light that glinted from within stung her eyes. It was the ring Ethan had given her 3 years ago when he proposed. The Rivers and the Hawthorns had been family friends for generations. Clara and Ethan were childhood sweethearts, and their families had arranged their engagement long ago. 3 years ago, after they graduated from university, they had naturally begun planning their wedding. But fate has a way of turning when you least expect it. While working on a major project with the Hawthorne Group, Arthur Rivers allegedly leaked confidential information to a competitor. The leak caused the Hawthorne Group to lose a key client, dealing the company a devastating blow. When Gregory Hawthorne learned that his closest friend of many years had betrayed him, the shock and anger brought on a sudden heart attack, and he passed away. Arthur Rivers was convicted of corporate espionage and sentenced to 5 years in prison. The Rivers family's assets were all seized. In an instant, 2 families were shattered. Clara would never forget that day. Ethan had stared at her, his eyes stripped of their former tenderness, replaced by a bone-deep hatred. He threw the diamond ring into the river and said, his words sharp and deliberate, "Clara Rivers, I will make you pay for this." After Ethan left, Clara hired people to dredge the river for 3 days and 3 nights, finally recovering the ring. She refused to believe that her father, a man who had always taught her to be upright and honest, would ever betray a friend. She waited for the day his name would be cleared, for the day she and Ethan could reconcile. So when Ethan, having stabilized his position, came to find her, she accepted his humiliating condition with little hesitation. She would be his servant until the day the truth came to light. For 3 years, Ethan had no girlfriends. There wasn't even a whisper of a scandal about him. Clara naively believed this was because he still had her in his heart. Though he was exceptionally cold, ordering her around all day, she told herself it was only because he couldn't move past his grief. One day, her father would be exonerated, and they would be whole again. But 2 weeks ago, Ethan had suddenly announced on social media that he was dating Sabrina Shaw. Mr. Shaw was a key executive who had been instrumental in the Hawthorne Group's recovery, and his daughter, Sabrina, was stunningly beautiful and utterly charming. The first time Ethan brought Sabrina home, Clara felt the air leave her lungs. She trembled so violently she could barely stand. She kept lying to herself, telling herself it was just for show, that they would break up soon. But then Sabrina started staying the night at the Hawthorne residence. Late at night, listening to the soft laughter coming from the master bedroom, Clara would toss and turn in her tiny maid's room, unable to sleep. She felt her heart sinking, piece by piece, as if something inside her had shattered beyond repair. The thought of leaving flickered in her mind for the first time, but the thought of her father in prison held her back. It wasn't until yesterday's phone call that Clara finally realized there was no one left here for her to hold on to. The soft click of the front door pulled Clara from her thoughts. Ethan was home. Clara hurried to the entrance, retrieved a pair of slippers from a nearby cabinet, and knelt on the floor to change his shoes for him. Kneeling service. This was another of Ethan's special requirements. Ethan glanced around the room, his brow furrowing. "You didn't cook." Since Clara had come to work as his servant, Ethan had dismissed all the other maids, keeping only the butler and the driver. He demanded Clara do all the chores herself. A shiver ran through Clara. She had completely forgotten her mind had been a chaotic fog since she received the news yesterday, and she hadn't been able to think of anything else. Clara answered timidly, "I'm sorry, I'll go make something right now." He replied coldly, "Forget it, I'm sick of your cooking anyway. Tell Mr. Lewis to call my usual restaurant and have them deliver dinner tonight." "Yes, Mr. Hawthorne," Clara said, her head bowed. "Your loungewear is ready. I'll go wash the clothes you've changed out of." Ethan's dark eyes flickered. For the past 3 years, no matter how he pushed her away or lost his temper, Clara had always insisted on calling him Ethan. Today, she had switched to Mr. Hawthorne, and he suddenly felt an inexplicable distance between them. Something about Clara seemed different. Later that evening, Clara found Ethan and told him she needed to take half a day off tomorrow to deal with something. Ethan's brow tightened. He seemed to guess what it was, and a flicker of anger crossed his face. "What could you possibly have to do? Are you going to see that murderer father of yours again?" Whenever Clara went to visit Arthur in prison, she had to do it behind Ethan's back, or it would inevitably lead to a furious outburst. "No, tomorrow is the anniversary of my mother's death. I want to visit her grave." Ethan's expression softened. "Fine, I'll go with you tomorrow to pay my respects to Auntie." Clara wanted to refuse, but he didn't give her the chance. "This isn't for you, it's for Auntie. She was very kind to me when I was a child. I'm not an ungrateful person. Now get out. Don't disturb my rest." Clara lowered her eyes and left the room. The next day, just as Ethan and Clara were about to leave, they ran into Sabrina Shaw. Sabrina enthusiastically linked her arm through Ethan's and kissed him on the cheek. "Ethan, where are you two off to?" Clara's gaze immediately fell on the diamond necklace around Sabrina's neck. It was shaped like a lavender sprig, exceptionally unique. It was the one Ethan had given her years ago. Clara loved lavender, so Ethan had commissioned a top designer to create a custom necklace just for her. He had told her it was one of a kind in the world, just like she was. Clara had adored it and wore it every day. Until that day 3 years ago, when Ethan, his eyes bloodshot with rage, had ripped it from her neck. The thin chain had cut into her skin, drawing blood. "You don't deserve this," he had said, his voice like ice. The memory made Clara silently lower her head. Ethan spoke a little unnaturally, "I'm just taking her out to run an errand." Sabrina's large, sparkling eyes widened as she shook his arm. "Ethan, didn't you promise to help me pick out a dress today? Did you forget?" Clara spoke up at the right moment. "Mr. Hawthorne, you should go with Miss Shaw. I can go by myself." "I'll drive you," he offered. "Ethan, I already made an appointment with the boutique owner. We'll be late if we don't leave now," Sabrina whined, continuing her act. Ethan hesitated for a few seconds before saying, "All right, we'll head out then. Be careful on your own." Clara nodded. She suddenly realized that her heart didn't ache anymore. After leaving the house, Clara first went to the embassy to submit her visa application. The staff told her it would likely be approved in about 2 weeks. Next, she went to the crematorium to collect Arthur Rivers's ashes. The father who had cherished her like the apple of his eye was now reduced to a small, cold box. She wondered if, in his final moments, he had still been worried about his only daughter. From now on, Clara was truly alone in the world, with no family left. She went to the cemetery and had her father interred with her mother. 2 small boxes, holding the 2 people who had once loved her more than anything in the world. "Mom, you're not alone down there anymore," Clara murmured. Her mother, Eleanor, had died in a car accident when Clara was 10. Fearing a stepmother would mistreat Clara, her father had never remarried. Seeing her cry inconsolably back then, a 10-year-old Ethan had used his small, tender hands to wipe away her tears. "Clara, don't cry. You still have me. I'll protect you for the rest of your life." Clara once believed it really would be for a lifetime. When she returned to the Hawthorne estate, Ethan and Sabrina were there. Ethan's sharp eyes caught her tear-swollen face. "Go wash your face," he said coolly. "Look at the state of you." A flicker of displeasure crossed Sabrina's eyes, but she quickly masked it with a gentle expression. "Ethan," she said to him, "tomorrow is my birthday party. Why don't we have Clara come along?" Ethan frowned. "She's a maid. Why would we invite her?" Sabrina melted into his arms. It's all our old university classmates. It'll be a good chance for everyone to catch up. I'm sure Clara misses them too. Clara wanted to refuse, but she had no say in the matter. Ethan agreed to Sabrina's suggestion. The day of the party, the three of them arrived at the hotel in a bizarre tableau. Although their classmates had seen Ethan's social media announcement, seeing it in person was far more impactful. Sabrina clung to Ethan like a delicate bird, while Clara, once so vibrant and cheerful, followed behind them with her head bowed, like a servant. A few of the more opportunistic classmates exchanged glances. They understood exactly why Sabrina had brought Clara along. They swarmed around Sabrina, fawning over her and calling her Mrs. Hawthorne-to-be. It was less about currying favor with Sabrina and more about kissing up to the Hawthorne group. A little bit of business falling through the cracks of such a massive conglomerate would be enough to set them up for life. Sabrina played the part of the powerful man's woman perfectly, greeting each of them with a gracious smile. Suddenly, one classmate exclaimed, Well, if it isn't Clara Rivers, I thought you and Ethan broke up. What are you doing here, shamelessly tagging along? Ethan's with a real beauty like Queenie Shaw now. Give it up, you don't stand a chance. Sabrina smiled and gestured for everyone to quiet down. The Hawthorns and the Rivers are old family friends, she explained sweetly. Ethan has a soft heart. He saw how pitiful she was, all alone, so he let her work as a maid at his house so he could look after her. Queenie, you're so kind, being so good to your boyfriend's ex-girlfriend, Mr. Hawthorne. You're a lucky man to have found a wife like her, another classmate said with a sneer. Looks like we won't need waiters today. We can just have the little maid serve us. Hey, you, come over here and fill up my glass. Ethan said nothing, his expression indifferent. Clara bit her lip. She was leaving soon. She didn't want to cause any trouble now. She obediently picked up the wine bottle and walked over to pour. As she was pouring, the classmate, whether intentionally or not, bumped into her hard. Clara lost her balance, and the bottle slipped from her grasp, shattering on the floor. Red wine spread across the carpet like a pool of blood. The classmate, whose name was Jard Hunt, shot to his feet, his face flushed with anger. What the hell are you doing? Are you blind? This suit is couture. It cost $15,000. Can you afford to replace it? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, Clara whispered. Sorry? Is that all you've got? If you don't pay up, I'm not letting you off the hook today. Come on, Jard, give her a break. Look at her, does she look like she can afford it? A classmate spoke up kindly. But another, enjoying the drama, chimed in, Where's that simp of yours, Lucas Kingston? Why isn't he here with you? Isn't he rich? Get him to pay for it. You didn't hear? He chased her for 4 years and got nothing. Clara broke his heart, so he moved abroad right after graduation. Clara's face was beet red. She couldn't possibly afford $15,000. Jard continued to glare at her, clearly not backing down. If you don't pay, I'll call the police, let you go to jail with your liar father. Clara had no choice but to look to Ethan for help. Mr. Hawthorne, could you please advance me $15,000 from my salary? I'll pay you back slowly. For Ethan, $15,000 was an amount he wouldn't even have to blink at. But he just stared off into the distance, his face a mask of indifference, as if he couldn't be bothered with such a trivial matter. Jard sneered. Still dreaming of being Mrs. Hawthorne, Clara? Wake up. He's got a beautiful woman by his side now. Why would he care about a little maid like you? Clara received no response from Ethan. After a moment's thought, she slowly and reluctantly pulled a watch from an inner pocket. Jard's eyes lit up, and he snatched it from her. Well, look at this, a limited edition Vacherin Constantin. You were hiding this little treasure. Fine, I'll take the loss. We'll call it even. Jard eagerly pocketed the watch. Anyone could see it was worth many times more than his suit. Clara felt a hand squeezing her heart. That watch was the only thing she had left of her father. Dad, I'm sorry. I couldn't even protect this last memento of you, she thought silently. A wave of heat rushed to her eyes, but she fought back the tears with all her might. No one here would pity her. They would only laugh. Having seen enough of the show, Sabrina clapped her hands with satisfaction. Well, as long as it's settled. All right, enough of this. Let's all go up to the roof. Ethan has a fireworks show prepared for me, surrounded by a fawning crowd. Sabrina walked proudly to the rooftop. As the brilliant fireworks exploded in the sky, Clara felt a sense of déjà vu. For every birthday before she turned 22, Ethan would meticulously prepare a fireworks display just for her. Back then, she had been moved by the fleeting beauty of the moment. She never imagined that her relationship with Ethan would also be as dazzling and ephemeral as fireworks. Lost in her memories, Clara didn't notice a burning ember arcing toward her. It landed on her arm, and she cried out in pain. "Clara, what's your problem? Way to ruin the mood," a classmate complained. Ethan frowned, his gaze shifting almost imperceptibly in her direction. A large patch of Clara's right arm was scorched red. It looked alarming. She bit her lip, stifling another cry of pain. A classmate noticed her injury and gasped. A knot tightened in Ethan's chest. He pushed through the crowd and strode toward her. Suddenly, another cry rang out, this time from Sabrina. She shrieked, clutching her arm and looking at Ethan with wide, pitiful eyes. "Ethan, I've been burned. Can you take me to the hospital?" Ethan hesitated for 2 seconds, then changed direction and walked back to Sabrina's side. "Let me see, is it bad?" But Sabrina refused to move her hand because underneath there wasn't even a scratch. She stammered, "Ethan, let's just go to the hospital. It hurts so much." Ethan's hesitation vanished. He scooped Sabrina into his arms and walked away without a single backward glance at Clara. Clara let out a self-deprecating laugh. For a moment there, when Ethan had walked toward her, she had actually thought he was concerned. Now it was clear he was just worried she would spoil the atmosphere. Amidst the pitying and mocking stares of her classmates, Clara left alone. The burn had become slightly infected, so Clara took the medicine the doctor prescribed and spent the night in a drowsy, fitful sleep. When she woke up, the sun was already high in the sky. Clara got up in a panic, quickly tidied herself and left her room, but Ethan wasn't home. He hadn't woken her up to make breakfast. He had just left for the office. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. Well, sleeping in until late morning. Are you here to be a maid or the lady of the house?" Clara turned to see Sabrina Shaw, dressed in a silk slip dress, an annoyed look on her face. "I was about to wake you, but Ethan actually stopped me. Said you were injured and needed to rest. You little seductress, what kind of spell have you cast on him?" "Sabrina, I didn't—" "Shut up, who gave you permission to call me Sabrina?" Sabrina pulled a dress out of a shopping bag. A maid should know her place. "Go wash this dress for me. And remember, hand wash only. It's real silk." "Miss Shaw, the doctor said my wound can't get wet for a few days." Clara instinctively touched her right arm. Blisters had formed, and it still throbbed with a burning pain. Sabrina threw the dress at her. "Have you had enough of playing the victim, you little slut? It's just a tiny burn. Do you really think you're some delicate princess? No matter how pathetic you act, Ethan won't give you a second look. Now go wash it, or I'll have Ethan throw you out." Clara said no more. She knew it was pointless. "Yes, Miss Shaw, I'll wash it right now." Clara plunged her hands into the ice-cold water and couldn't help but gasp. She washed the dress carefully, trying to keep her injured arm from getting too wet. There was a stain on the dress. Just as Clara was about to apply more water and scrub harder, she accidentally broke one of the blisters on her arm. A searing pain shot through her. She let out a soft cry, and her body lurched, knocking over the basin. The basin, dress and all, crashed to the floor, splashing soapy water everywhere. With a soft tearing sound, a small rip appeared in the dress. The loud noise brought Sabrina running. Seeing the scene before her, Sabrina's anger flared. "How dare you ruin my dress? Are you looking for trouble?" Sabrina's face was twisted with rage. She raised her hand and slapped Clara across the face. Clara lost her balance and fell to the floor. "You shameless woman, when you couldn't seduce Ethan, you decided to get revenge on me with this cheap trick. Ethan must have been blind to ever fall for someone like you. What's going on?" A voice suddenly asked from behind them. It was Ethan. Sabrina flinched. She had been so caught up in her anger that she hadn't heard him come back. She quickly composed herself and turned to wrap her arm around his. "Ethan, I just wanted Clara to help me wash the new dress I bought yesterday. You know my arm was burned, so I can't get it wet. But when I came over just now, I saw her tearing the dress and muttering curses about me. I tried to grab it back from her, and we accidentally knocked over the basin. Ethan, this was the dress I bought for our big day next week, and she just ripped it. What am I going to do?" Sabrina sobbed, tears welling in her eyes. Clara sat on the floor, her cheek red and swollen, her heart a wasteland of sorrow. All she could manage was a week. It wasn't like that. Clara was suddenly reminded of elementary school when a few bullies had cornered her in an alley, demanding her money. It was Ethan who had saved her. He had taken on all three of them. Though he was outmatched, his fierce, fearless demeanor had scared them off. Back then, Ethan had been like a ferocious little beast, protecting her with everything he had. Now, those fangs and claws were turned on her. As expected, Ethan had no interest in hearing her explanation. "Clara, you've disappointed me greatly," he scolded, his face grim. "Get over here and apologize to Sabrina right now." Clara slowly got to her feet and bowed to Sabrina. "Miss Shaw, I was wrong." "It's all right. I understand, Clara. Seeing us so happy together must be hard for you," Sabrina said, putting on a compassionate act. "If she dares to have any more delusions, I'll throw her out immediately," Ethan said coldly. "The daughter of the man who killed my father. The fact that I haven't made her pay with her life is already an act of extraordinary mercy. Clara, as punishment, you will not eat for the rest of the day. Now clean this mess up immediately." Clara nodded meekly. Delusions? She wouldn't have them anymore. Just 2 more weeks, she told herself silently. Hold on for 2 more weeks and you'll never have to see him again. When Clara woke up the next day, her entire body felt hot and her head was spinning. Working all day on an empty stomach had caused her burn to become infected again. She touched her forehead. She seemed to have a fever. She staggered out of her room just as Ethan was walking out of his bedroom, adjusting his cufflinks. He frowned. "You're just getting up now? I let you off once yesterday, and now you're pushing your luck? Have I been too easy on you lately? Have you forgotten your place? Don't forget, you are a servant in this house. Your murderer father gets out in 2 years. You wouldn't want anything to happen to him, would you?" Ethan's gaze was as cold as ice water. Clara's mind was a muddle. She looked up and Ethan's mouth was moving, but she couldn't make out what he was saying. Seeing her dazed expression, Ethan grew even angrier and stepped forward to grab her. Before his hand could touch her, Clara could no longer hold on. She collapsed to the floor. "Clara, stop pretending, get up right now." The butler, Mr. Lewis, heard the commotion and came running. Seeing the scene, he said with an anxious smile, "Mr. Hawthorne, Miss Rivers didn't eat yesterday. Perhaps she fainted from low blood sugar?" "Didn't eat?" Ethan suddenly erupted in anger. "Why didn't you let her eat?" Mr. Lewis was stunned. He stammered, "But wasn't that your order? So if I tell her not to eat, she doesn't eat. Is she an idiot or are you?" Ethan snapped. He knelt and helped Clara up from the floor, his hand brushing against her scorching forehead. His brow furrowed deeply. Clara was burning up with a high fever. Without another thought, he bent down and lifted her into his arms. "Mr. Lewis, open the gate. I'm taking her to the hospital now." Just then, his phone rang. Ethan answered it. "Ethan, I've been in a car accident. What should I do?" It was Sabrina, her voice choked with tears. "What happened? Are you okay?" Sabrina was crying too hard to form a complete sentence, just repeating his name and begging him to come quickly. Ethan hesitated for a moment, then gently set Clara down. "Mr. Lewis, you take her to the hospital. I have something to attend to." Clara felt as if she were in a hazy dream. In the dream, she was deathly ill, and Ethan came to see her, his sharp gaze terrifying. "You should have died long ago," he said. "You and your father can both go atone for your sins to my father in hell." Then he turned and walked away without looking back. Sabrina was waiting for him nearby, and she threw herself into his arms with a radiant smile. Clara then dreamed of her youth. Their school was strict, but whenever she had menstrual cramps, Ethan would climb over the wall to buy her painkillers and brown sugar. He would come back, brew it with hot water, and watch her with anxious eyes until she drank it all. When Clara opened her eyes again, she saw only Mr. Lewis. It had all been just a long dream. Clara was in the hospital for 5 days. Ethan never once came to visit. Mr. Lewis said he was busy with important matters. Mr. Lewis also secretly told her that Sabrina's car had only suffered a minor scratch, and she herself was unharmed. Clara laughed at the irony. None of it mattered to her now. 1 week left. The day she was discharged, Clara returned to her room and moved the boxes of her old mementos with Ethan into the bathroom. She struck a lighter, the small flame illuminating the resolve in her eyes. Without hesitation, she tossed it into one of the boxes. In an instant, a hot fire roared to life. Watching the past turn to ash, Clara whispered softly, "Goodbye, Ethan Hawthorne." For the next 3 days, Clara's life was unusually calm. Ethan seemed to be busy with something important, and she rarely saw him. It was better this way. A silent farewell. On the fourth night, Clara suddenly received a call from Ethan. When she answered, however, it was Sabrina's voice on the line. "Clara, go to Ethan's closet, find his tie with the gold floral pattern, and bring it to the Azure Hotel." "Where's Ethan?" Clara asked cautiously. "He's right next to me, of course. How else would I be calling you from his phone? Hurry up. Ethan has a very important banquet tonight. If you're late, you'll have me to answer to." Sabrina hung up abruptly. Clara found it a little strange. Delivering a tie seemed like a job for the driver, not a maid like her. She sighed. With only 3 days left, she didn't want any more complications. She retrieved the tie from the closet, folded it neatly into a box, and set off for the Azure Hotel. When she arrived, she realized something was off. The entrance was flanked by lavish flower arrangements, mostly filled with lilies, Clara's favorite. A beautiful and elegant floral arch stood at the doorway. Clara hesitated before entering the lobby, where she was met with a giant poster. On it, Ethan and Sabrina were embracing happily. Beside the photo, a line of text read, "Welcome to the engagement party of Ethan Hawthorne and Sabrina Shaw." Clara's eyelashes trembled. So this was why he had been leaving early and coming home late. He was planning his engagement. The venue was clearly meticulously decorated. When it came to the women he liked, Ethan had always been one to give his all. Clara was debating whether to go in when she heard a familiar voice. Well, the little maid came to attend her master's engagement party." Jard Hunt walked in, grinning. "Why are you just standing here? Come on, don't be shy, let this young master take you." And Jard's greasy hand was about to land on Clara's shoulder. She sidestepped him and walked into the ballroom alone. Inside, magnificent crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like constellations, casting a brilliant light over everything. 3 years ago, when Ethan had proposed, she had told him she wanted a simple, romantic lawn wedding with only family and close friends. Ethan had agreed, but worried that such a modest ceremony wouldn't be good enough for her. Clara had smiled and shaken her head, telling him that marrying the person she loved was more blissful than any opulent venue. But perhaps only an engagement party as grand and elegant as this was worthy of the man he was now. Clara collected herself and began searching the crowd for Ethan. Suddenly, a sharp voice cried out, "Clara Rivers, what are you doing here?" Sabrina was striding toward her, shouting. Hearing Clara's name, the guests were startled and all turned to look in her direction. Sabrina was wearing the silk dress, its smooth, soft fabric outlining her graceful figure. So that was it. The day Ethan had abandoned her to go shopping, it had been to choose an engagement outfit. Clara looked at Sabrina, who was acting as if she were interrogating a criminal, and said in confusion, "Didn't you ask me to bring Mr. Hawthorne his tie? If you're going to lie, at least make it believable. Ethan is in the dressing room changing. On a day as important as this, how could he possibly forget his tie? You must still have feelings for Ethan, so you came here to ruin our engagement party." Clara was about to explain when she felt hostile stares coming from all directions. She looked around and realized that most of the guests were from the Hawthorne group. She knew many of them, people she used to call auntie and uncle. But in the leak scandal 3 years ago, the Hawthorne group had been severely damaged, and all of these people had been affected in one way or another. They had cursed Arthur Rivers countless times in private, but with him in prison, their words were useless. Now, his daughter had walked right into their midst. How could they possibly let her go so easily? Clara turned to leave, but her path was blocked. "What do you think this is? A place you can just come and go as you please?" It was Sabrina's father, Richard Shaw. "Mr. Shaw, I really just came to deliver something." "I'll leave right now, I won't disturb you," Clara said, her voice trembling slightly. A venomous glint appeared in Richard Shaw's eyes. "Clara Rivers, your father killed Mr. Hawthorne's father and nearly bankrupted the Hawthorne Group. How dare you show your face here? I know you and Ethan had a history, but today is my daughter's engagement party with him, and you show up with the intent to sabotage it. You truly have a heart of stone." The crowd gradually closed in, blocking Clara's escape. After her father killed the old Mr. Hawthorne, she still has the gall to live comfortably in the Hawthorne home. Mr. Hawthorne is too kind. Someone like her should be left on the streets. Arthur Rivers almost cost us our jobs, and now his daughter comes to ruin a wedding. Like father, like daughter. Why wasn't she thrown in jail too? She should be in prison with that murderer father of hers. Clara was drowning in a sea of insults. She clutched the tie box, her body trembling, unable to utter a single word. If she could, she would gladly go to prison just to see her father one more time. "Mr. Shaw, what should we do with her? Should we call the police and have her arrested?" Richard Shaw sneered, looking down at Clara. "I'm a reasonable man. If you bow and apologize to my daughter today and promise to never appear before Mr. Hawthorne again, I'll let you go." Clara stopped trembling. The demand was so simple she could hardly believe it. She had never planned on seeing him again anyway. Clara turned, bowed deeply to Sabrina, and said, enunciating each word, "Miss Shaw, it was presumptuous of me to have had improper thoughts about Mr. Hawthorne. From this day forward, I will never appear before you or him again. I wish you both a long and happy life together and many children soon." Clara spoke with such conviction that it was clear she wasn't pretending. Behind the crowd, a man's eyes suddenly filled with a sense of loss. "Clara Rivers, who told you to come here?" The man pushed through the crowd and stood before her. Clara looked up at the impeccably dressed and distinguished Ethan Hawthorne. "Miss Shaw asked me to bring you your tie," she said. "Ethan, I don't know what she's talking about. I didn't ask her to bring any tie," Sabrina said, her eyes wide with innocent confusion. Ethan's brow furrowed. "Clara, you've gone too far coming here on your own and then lying without even blushing. You're just like your father. Now get out of my sight, and don't you dare step a foot outside the house without my permission." Clara looked at Ethan. He always knew exactly how to hurt her the most. Fortunately, it didn't hurt anymore. She suddenly let out a soft laugh. "As you wish, Mr. Hawthorne." Clara spent her last 3 days at the Hawthorne estate in peace. Ethan did not return once during that time. The day she received her visa, Clara packed a small suitcase. It contained all of her belongings. The mementos of her time with Ethan had all been burned to ashes, not a single one remained. While Mr. Lewis was out, Clara slipped away from the house unnoticed. She turned back for one last look at the villa where she had lived for 3 years and whispered, "Goodbye, Ethan Hawthorne." And farewell. Clara boarded a flight to Paris. 12 hours later, Clara's plane landed in Paris. As she walked out of customs, she saw Lucas Kingston in the distance, waving his arm excitedly. He looked just as she remembered. Handsome, with bright, clear eyes and a wide smile that revealed 8 perfect teeth. Clara, was the flight tiring? Lucas reached out as if to hug her, but then seemed to think better of it, changing the gesture to taking her luggage instead. Clara smiled faintly. A long-forgotten sense of peace began to sprout in her heart. It was fine, not too bad. "Come on, I'll take you home." Lucas's villa was in the suburbs of Paris, a 3-story house with a front garden he had meticulously cared for. As Clara stepped inside, she remarked, "Why so much lavender?" Lucas's face immediately turned red. He scratched his head. I remembered you liked it." Looking at him, Clara was reminded of the young man who had stood before her all those years ago, nervously confessing his feelings. "Come on, let me show you your room," Lucas said excitedly, leading her upstairs. The room he had prepared for her was on the 2nd floor, the largest in the villa. It had a spacious walk-in closet and a bathroom, and the lazy afternoon sun streamed through a massive window onto the bed. He had given her the master bedroom. Clara couldn't help but think of the tiny, windowless maid's room she had left behind. "Clara, I'll be downstairs. If you need anything, just call for me. And don't worry, I won't touch you before we're married." A blush crept up his face again. "Lucas, there's something I need to ask you for help with." "What is it?" "I'll do whatever I can to help," he said, looking at her earnestly. "I want to continue my studies. I looked up the admission requirements for the Paris College of Design before I left, and I meet the criteria. But the language is a big hurdle for me. Could you help me prepare the application materials?" Lucas nodded seriously. "Of course, Clara, this is important. I'll definitely help you. Even back in university, I always thought you were incredibly talented. I was sure you'd have a great career. It's such a shame you lost so many years after graduation. But let's not dwell on sad things. Leave the application to me." Clara nodded gratefully. It had been a long time since she had heard anyone praise her abilities. 3 years as a servant had worn her down, dimming her light. She had almost forgotten that she, too, was once considered one of the most talented students at her university. Lucas told her to rest and adjust to the time difference and left the room, telling her to call him if she needed anything. Lying on the fresh sheets Lucas had prepared for her, Clara had the most peaceful sleep she'd had in 3 years. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, evening was falling in Sterling City. Ethan Hawthorne dragged his weary body back to the estate. The major plan he had been meticulously laying out for months was finally in its final stages. He had intended to finish everything before coming home, but an inexplicable sense of panic had seized him today. Thinking of Clara, whom he had humiliated and sent home, he decided to come back and check on her. He was greeted by a terrified-looking Mr. Lewis. Ethan frowned. "Where's Clara? Has she gotten so bold that she doesn't even bother to greet her master when he comes home?" Mr. Lewis's voice trembled. "Mr. Hawthorne, she disappeared early this morning." "What did you say?" Ethan's voice was low, but it carried a chilling authority. "Didn't I tell you to confine her to the house? How dare she leave without permission? What kind of butler are you?" Mr. Lewis was trembling. "Mr. Hawthorne, this is indeed my failure. She must have left in the early hours of the morning when I wasn't paying attention. You've ordered her to be confined before, and she always obeyed. I never thought this time." Meeting Ethan's dark gaze, Mr. Lewis didn't dare continue and fell silent. Ethan snorted. "I've been too lenient with her. Now she dares to throw a tantrum and run away from home. Her mother is dead, her father is in prison. After the Rivers Group went bankrupt, she has no one else to turn to. I'd like to see where she thinks she can go." Mr. Lewis immediately chimed in. "You're right, Mr. Hawthorne. It's already dark. She has nowhere to stay. She'll surely be back soon." Ethan's face remained grim, and he said nothing. Mr. Lewis quietly retreated. The next morning, however, when Mr. Lewis came down to the living room, yawning, he was shocked to see Ethan slumped on the sofa with dark circles under his eyes, looking exhausted. He had waited up all night for Clara. "Mr. Hawthorne," Mr. Lewis began cautiously. Perhaps due to lack of sleep, Ethan was on edge and looking for someone to vent his frustration on. Poor Mr. Lewis walked right into the line of fire. "You can't even watch one person. You're useless. Get all our people on it now and find her. If I don't have news of her within a day, you can pack your bags." Sweat beaded on Mr. Lewis's forehead. He nodded frantically. "Yes, Mr. Hawthorne, I'll arrange it right away." "Wait," Ethan said, a thought occurring to him. "First, call the prison. For all we know, her running away was her murderer father's idea. See if they know anything." Mr. Lewis returned a short, while later with news that stunned Ethan. "Died of illness?" Ethan murmured. In that moment, all the hatred he had harbored for years seemed to evaporate into thin air. He let out a heavy sigh. "Father, Arthur Rivers has gone to atone for his sins. If you are watching from beyond, can you forgive him? Only in the face of death could such deep-seated grudges be laid to rest." Ethan snapped back to reality, a sudden tightness in his chest. When something like this happened, the prison would notify the family immediately. "Mr. Lewis, when did Arthur Rivers pass away?" 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, that was when Ethan had first sensed something was off with Clara. How had she been coping with the pain of losing a parent all by herself these past days? Thinking about how he had treated her recently, a chill ran down Ethan's spine. "Mr. Lewis, open the maid's room for me." Stepping inside, Ethan realized his fears might be true. Clara's tiny room, which had always been cluttered, was now starkly empty. It wasn't that she had many personal belongings, but because she had kept every single memento of their time together. Now, it was bare. Not a trace of her presence remained. In the bathroom, Ethan found a small pile of ashes. His heart clenched. He saw fragments of letters, words that once spoke of his love for her. At the bottom of the ashes, Ethan found a small, shiny object. It was the ring he had thrown into the river. 3 years ago, Clara had gone to great lengths to find it. 3 years later, she had discarded it in despair, just as she had discarded him. A wave of dizziness washed over Ethan. He staggered to his feet. He finally understood the source of his inexplicable panic from the day before. "Mr. Lewis, mobilize everyone in the company to find Clara. I don't care what it takes. You must bring her back." A small sliver of hope remained in Ethan's heart. Maybe she was just overwhelmed by her father's death and had run off to clear her head. Once she had time to think, she would come back to him, right? But by that evening, as he listened to the butler's report, Ethan's heart sank. There was no doubt about it. Clara had left Sterling City and was likely no longer in the country. Otherwise, with the Hawthorne Group's connections, it would be impossible not to find a single trace of her. Check Clara's call history for the past 2 weeks. The butler quickly reported back. Clara had very little contact with the outside world, so it was easy to find 2 suspicious numbers. One was traced to the French embassy. The other call was from Paris. At the same time, the butler had checked Clara's travel records. She had taken the earliest flight yesterday and had already landed in Paris. She was really gone. Ethan's chest tightened with anxiety. He was about to tell Mr. Lewis to book the next flight to Paris when he forced himself to calm down. Paris was a huge city. He didn't know where she was. Even if he went, it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. Ethan stared at the phone number from Paris. After a long hesitation, he finally dialed it. The call was answered quickly. "Hello, this is Lucas Kingston. Who is this?" Lucas Kingston? The familiar name made Ethan pause. He searched his memory and finally recalled that Lucas was a university classmate who had been in love with Clara. Back then, Lucas had been incredibly devoted, waiting outside her dorm every morning with breakfast and secretly checking her class schedule just to catch a glimpse of her in the lecture hall. But Ethan had never considered him a threat. Clara had never accepted any of Lucas's gifts, and she would politely avoid him in class. When Lucas confessed his feelings to her, she had firmly told him that she only had eyes for Ethan. That once cherished devotion, which had filled Ethan with pride, now filled him with a bitter ache. "It's me, Ethan Hawthorne," he said slowly, after composing himself. After hanging up, Lucas looked conflicted. He went upstairs and knocked gently on Clara's door. When Clara opened it, looking sleepy, Lucas felt a pang of sympathy. "Did I wake you?" Clara shook her head. "It's okay, I was just waking up anyway." Seeing Clara in her comfortable loungewear, her face fresh and lovely without any makeup, Lucas was momentarily lost for words. "Did you need something?" Lucas snapped back to the present. "Clara, Ethan Hawthorne just called me." At the sound of the familiar name, Clara's expression changed slightly. Lucas watched her carefully and asked cautiously, "Clara, does Ethan not know you're in Paris? Is there some misunderstanding between you two?" Clara looked up, her gaze firm. "There's no misunderstanding between us. I served as a maid in his house for 3 years because of what happened to my father. Now that my father has passed away, the Rivers family owes him nothing. I didn't tell him I was coming to Paris because there was no need to. There's nothing left between Ethan and me." Lucas secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He was all too aware of the depth of Clara's feelings for Ethan. So when Clara had called and said she would marry him, Lucas had been so overjoyed he thought he was dreaming. "That's good, then. Clara, since you're up, come have breakfast. I made you your favorite fried eggs," Lucas said cheerfully. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in Sterling City, Ethan Hawthorne boarded a flight to France. The first thing Ethan did upon arriving in Paris was call Lucas and beg him to meet, no matter what. Ethan knew he was taking advantage of Lucas's kindness, but it was his only hope. Although they hadn't interacted much in university, Ethan vaguely remembered Lucas as a warm, cheerful, and helpful person. Could Clara really fall in love with such a warm-hearted man? Ethan quickly shook his head, banishing the thought. In a coffee shop, Lucas met with Ethan. He looked haggard and exhausted, a far cry from the confident, self-possessed man he had been in their university days. Ethan stood and bowed slightly. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." Lucas waved it off. "We're old classmates. There's no need for such formalities." Ethan's voice was hoarse. "I won't beat around the bush. You know why I'm in Paris. I need to see Clara, even for just 10 minutes. I really miss her." Lucas felt a pang in his heart, but he maintained a polite demeanor. "But Clara said you two broke up 3 years ago, and she was working as a servant in your house. Now that her father has passed, I hope you'll let her go and stop tormenting her." "It's not like that. I've always loved Clara. Even after our families fell out, I still loved her deeply. I made her stay at my house as a servant because I was worried her enemies would seek revenge on her." Lucas frowned. "But from what I understand, you're engaged to your girlfriend. Is showing up now and playing the devoted lover your way of having your cake and eating it too?" Ethan stammered, "It's not like that. I have my reasons." Lucas stood up, his fists clenched, and stared at Ethan. "I don't care what your reasons are. That's no excuse for how you treated her. Have you seen Clara's hands? They're covered in thick calluses and scars from frostbite. Her hands were meant for holding a paintbrush, not for doing rough labor. You don't deserve Clara. You don't deserve her love, she's not going back with you, so get that idea out of your head." As Lucas turned to leave, Ethan quickly stood and grabbed his arm. "I know," Ethan said, his voice filled with guilt. "I owe Clara so much for these past years. Please, for old time's sake, just help me arrange a meeting with her. Just one meeting. I just want to clear up all the misunderstandings so we don't have any regrets." Lucas was silent for a long time. Finally, he said, "I'll tell Clara you're in Paris. She has the right to know. Whether she wants to see you or not is her decision." With a complicated look at Ethan, Lucas turned and left. Back at his house, Lucas recounted his conversation with Ethan. Clara shook her head firmly. "I'm not seeing him. There are no misunderstandings to clear up between us." Lucas felt a small sense of relief. Seeing the subtle shift in his expression, Clara found it endearing and decided to tease him a little. "Lucas, I thought you liked me. Why are you pleading his case? Aren't you afraid I'll change my mind and go back with him?" Lucas took her hand and said seriously, "Clara, whether I love you or not, whether we get married or not, you are a free person. You have the right to choose at any time. I know you agreed to my proposal, but you're not ready for it. Don't worry, I'll wait for you to be sure. I won't pressure you." Tears welled in Clara's eyes. The word freedom had been a luxury for her in the past. She had been trapped not just by her role as a servant, but by her love for Ethan for so long that she had lost herself. She gently hugged him. "Thank you, Lucas." A few days after arriving in Paris, Clara had finally adjusted to the time difference. She wanted to explore the city, but Lucas was busy with work every day, and she didn't want to bother him. One day, the weather was so beautiful that Clara couldn't resist going out. She strolled along the riverbank, the sun glinting off the sparkling water. Clara stretched and sat down by the river to feed the ducks. It had been a long time since she had felt so at ease. Maybe staying in Paris, marrying Lucas, and living a quiet life wouldn't be so bad after all. As she enjoyed the pleasant breeze, the sky began to darken without her noticing. Clara snapped back to reality and quickly got up to head home. She had heard about the crime rate in Paris and wanted to be back before nightfall. But after walking for half an hour, she realized with a sense of panic that she was lost. Every street looked the same. She couldn't read the signs, and as it grew darker, she couldn't find her way back. Clara suddenly had a strange feeling that someone was following her. She quickened her pace, her heart pounding. But the more she panicked, the more lost she became. The last sliver of twilight faded from the sky, and darkness spread like spilled ink. Before she could react, she was cornered in a small alley. A burly, rough-looking man stood before her. He grinned menacingly and advanced, speaking in a French she didn't understand. Her palms were slick with sweat. She forced herself to stay calm and think of a way out. She spoke in English, offering him money, and held out her wallet. The man sneered, snatched the wallet, but showed no signs of letting her go. His eyes lingered on her, making her skin crawl. Just as she was deciding whether to scream for help or grab a nearby steel pipe and attack, a tall figure suddenly appeared, blocking her from the man. In the dim moonlight, she couldn't make out his face, but she recognized his voice. "Get lost!" Ethan's fist connected with the man's face. Clara heard a pained cry. The man, enraged, lunged at Ethan, and the two began to fight. The man was strong, and Ethan was quickly overpowered, taking several heavy blows. Clara grabbed the steel pipe, took a deep breath to steady herself, and swung it hard against the man's back. He yelled in pain, let go of Ethan, and stumbled away, cursing. Even after he was long gone, Clara was still trembling. Ethan saw this and pulled her into his arms. "It's okay, I'm here." For a moment, Clara was transported back to the alley beside their elementary school. She froze, then gently pushed him away. "Thank you for today," she said, her tone polite but distant. Ethan stared at her, his eyes like those of a wounded deer. "Is that all? Just thank you? Clara, we haven't seen each other in days. Don't you miss me?" Clara was taken aback. She had never heard Ethan sound so vulnerable. "Mr. Hawthorne, I am merely your servant. It's not appropriate for you to speak to me this way. Miss Shaw would be upset." Ethan let out a heavy sigh. "Clara, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to give me some time to explain everything. Tonight's incident in exchange for one dinner with me. That's not too much to ask, is it?" Clara looked up to refuse, but in the moonlight, she saw a long gash on his brow, blood beading on the surface. She finally nodded. Clara and Ethan sat in a spacious, brightly lit restaurant in silence. Clara had nothing to say, and Ethan, who had prepared a whole speech, found himself at a loss for words now that she was in front of him. The silence was broken by the ringing of a phone. Ethan answered. Sabrina Shaw's sharp voice pierced the air, audible even to Clara. "Ethan, what's going on? Why has my father been arrested? Where are you?" "Ethan, make them let my dad go," Sabrina cried desperately. Ethan replied coldly, "You know better than I do what your father has done. He deserves what's coming to him." Sabrina was stunned into silence. After a few seconds, she spoke again. "Ethan, there must be some mistake, please, for my sake, forgive my father. We're about to get married. What will people say if my father is in prison?" Ethan rubbed his temples wearily. "Sabrina, have I not been clear enough? I am not marrying you. Your father had you seduce me so he could embezzle from the Hawthorne Group more easily. Now that he's been exposed, how can you still come to me with a straight face?" "Ethan," Sabrina's tone softened, "whatever my father did, I truly love you. And I believe you have feelings for me too, don't you?" "Sabrina, our relationship was just a way to put your father off his guard. I never had any feelings for you. There has only ever been one person in my heart." Sabrina suddenly understood. She shrieked, "You went to find Clara, didn't you? Clara Rivers, you little slut seducing another woman's fiancé, your whole family is trash, you're all lowlifes." Ethan hung up and looked down, his face full of guilt. After a long silence, he spoke. "Clara, you heard. My relationship with Sabrina was not what you thought." Ethan then explained what had happened over the past few weeks. Soon after taking over the Hawthorne Group, he had sensed something was wrong with Richard Shaw. But at the time, Ethan's position was not yet secure, and as a veteran executive, Richard was crucial to the company's recovery. Over the years, however, Richard had grown bolder, embezzling large sums of money and placing his own people in key positions, threatening to usurp control of the company. Though young, Ethan was patient. While fighting Richard's influence, he had been secretly gathering evidence of his corruption. When Richard realized Ethan was not as naive as he seemed, he sent Sabrina to try and undermine the company from within, but Ethan saw through their plan. The reason he had been away from home for so long was that he was busy collecting evidence and building alliances to deliver a decisive blow against Richard. The day Clara left, Ethan had finally sprung his trap, uprooting Richard's entire network and sending him to prison. "Clara, I know I neglected you during that time, but I had to protect the company. It was my parents' life's work. I couldn't let it fall into someone else's hands. Since I can remember, you have been the only one in my heart. That has never changed. Clara, let's go home. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." Clara's eyelashes fluttered. For 3 years, she had dreamed of this moment countless times. Ethan standing before her, asking her to take him back. She had imagined she would burst into tears of joy, throw her arms around him, and they would reconcile, their love stronger than ever. But now that the dream was a reality, Clara found herself surprisingly calm. Perhaps it was the daily torment of the past 3 years. Perhaps it was the sting of seeing him with another woman. Or perhaps it was the shock of her father's death. Her heart no longer beat for Ethan. "Mr. Hawthorne," Clara began slowly. Ethan grabbed her hand anxiously. "Clara, can't you even call me Ethan anymore?" Clara looked at him, then lowered her gaze. "Ethan, I used to love you very much. I couldn't imagine a life without you. But I don't want to hear, but," Clara continued anyway. "But a broken mirror cannot be mended. What's done is done. The humiliation of the past 3 years was enough to extinguish all my feelings for you. When you punished me by making me clean on an empty stomach, when you made me wash clothes by hand in freezing water in the middle of winter, when you allowed Sabrina to bully me, you should have known that we could never go back." Ethan's eyes grew red. "Clara, it was all my fault. I was too blinded by my grief for my father." "Blinded? Does that one word erase all the pain you caused me? Even if my father had done something wrong, it was his own doing. You took all your anger out on me. Did you ever stop to think how much that hurt me? Clara, I'm sorry. You can curse me, hit me, do whatever you want. Just please don't leave me." Clara stood up and turned her back to him. "Ethan, I'm going to marry Lucas. He's a kind man who respects my career and gives me my freedom. I hope you can be happy for us." Clara walked out of the restaurant without looking back. When she returned to the villa, she found Lucas pacing anxiously, about to go out and look for her. Clara, are you okay? Where have you been so late? Lucas asked worriedly, taking her arm. It's nothing. I was just bored and went for a walk. Lucas immediately began to blame himself. It's all my fault. I've been so busy with work lately, I forgot to take you out. How about this? I'll take a few days off and we can visit some nearby sites. There's no need, Lucas. You should focus on your work. Don't worry about me, Clara said, forcing a smile. Lucas noticed her strange mood and had a sinking feeling. Did you see Ethan Hawthorne today? Clara hadn't planned on hiding it from him, so she told him everything that had happened. Lucas was silent for a few seconds before saying, I thought he had left Paris, but it seems he's been waiting here all this time. He must have been following you today, otherwise he wouldn't have been there to help you so quickly. Well, I'm not exactly happy about that, but if it weren't for him, you would have been in danger. I guess I should thank him. Lucas ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Clara couldn't help but chuckle. Don't worry. I'll be more careful from now on. As for Ethan, I've made things clear to him. He won't be bothering us anymore. Clara tried to sound cheerful, but her heart ached with a strange pang of sadness. Seeing her somber expression, Lucas grew thoughtful. The next morning, Clara woke up to find Lucas gone. In his place was a note on the living room table. Clara, I know you haven't completely let go of Ethan. I'll be away on business for a few days to give you some space to think. Whatever you decide, I will support you unconditionally. Next to the note was a thick file folder and a plastic bag. Clara opened the folder. Inside were the application materials Lucas had prepared for her, along with various notes and research he had compiled for the interview. The plastic bag contained some daily necessities, and he had even thoughtfully included pepper spray and sanitary pads. A warmth spread through Clara's chest as she pictured Lucas awkwardly buying pads at the supermarket. He was like a small sun, wrapping her in his warmth, melting the ice around her heart. The scales in Clara's heart tipped once again in his favor. She decided she would wait for Lucas to return, marry him, and live a quiet, happy life together. That day, Clara went out for a walk and ran into Ethan again. He stood there, looking dejected, with several days' worth of stubble on his chin. He was a shadow of the decisive, powerful CEO he once was. Clara, he began, but his voice choked with emotion. I'm so sorry. In a halting, broken voice, Ethan told her the shocking truth. After his arrest, Richard Shaw had confessed to a series of crimes. Among them was the leak from 3 years ago. For a mere $200,000, Richard had sold the confidential files to the Hawthorne Group's competitor and framed Arthur Rivers for it. After Arthur was arrested, Richard had gotten away with it, which had emboldened him to continue embezzling company funds until Ethan discovered his crimes. $200,000 had cost the lives of Gregory Hawthorne and Arthur Rivers. Tears streamed down Clara's face. She had always known her father, an upright man his entire life, would never betray a friend. But no matter how she had pleaded his case, no one had believed her, especially Ethan. Every time she had cautiously brought it up, hoping he would reinvestigate the case, he had shut her down with a harsh reprimand and punished her by withholding food. Dad, your name has finally been cleared, but you're not here to see it. Clara slowly sank to the ground, covering her face as tears flowed freely. What began as quiet sobs soon turned into heart-wrenching wails, as if she were finally releasing all the pain and injustice of the past years. Clara, it's all my fault. Ethan's heart ached with an unbearable pain. He stepped forward, wanting to hold her. Clara shot to her feet and shoved him away. The next second, the sharp crack of a slap echoed in the air. A burning sensation spread across Ethan's cheek. He was stunned. In all their years together, Clara had never even raised her voice to him in an argument. This was the first time she had ever hit him. Ethan licked his lips, fighting back the pain in his face and his heart. Clara, I know you're angry. Let it all out. I won't blame you. Clara looked at him, her eyes blurry with tears. Ethan, how many times did I beg you to reopen the investigation? If you had just listened to me once. Richard Shaw confessed so easily this time because the original case was full of holes. He knew the truth would come out eventually, so he confessed to get a lighter sentence. You never cared who the real culprit was, you just needed a target for your grief over your father's death. First it was my father, and then it was me. If it weren't for your stubbornness, your cruelty, my father, he wouldn't have died in prison with his name still tarnished. Clara took a deep breath, trying to stop the tears. "Ethan, get out of my sight. For the rest of my life, I never want to see your face again." Ethan looked at her with sorrow, about to speak, but she turned her head away, refusing to look at him. The words died in his throat. What more was there to say? He stepped forward, gently took her hand, and placed something in her palm. Then, with one last, lingering look, he walked away. After he was gone, Clara opened her hand. In her palm lay her father's pocket watch. For the next few days, Ethan didn't bother Clara. She thought he had finally given up. But then, she received news that his grandmother, Beatrice Hawthorne, was critically ill. Hearing the despair in Ethan's voice, an image of the kind, benevolent old woman flashed in Clara's mind. Grandma Beatrice had always felt sorry for Clara for losing her mother at such a young age and had treated her like her own granddaughter. Whenever Clara visited, Grandma Beatrice would insist she was too thin and present her with a table full of fruits and snacks, only stopping when Clara was clutching her full stomach. After their families falling out, Ethan had done his best to hide the truth from his grandmother, telling her that his father was abroad on business. He would bring Clara to visit her every so often, pretending they were still together. Grandma Beatrice was old and often confused, so the deception had worked for the past 3 years. Clara sighed. "All right, I'll go back with you." After leaving a message for Lucas explaining the situation, Clara boarded a flight back to Sterling City. In the hospital room, Clara saw her again. She was gaunt and pale, her eyes closed, tubes running all over her body. The arm resting on the edge of the bed was sallow and bloodless, the dry skin stretched taut over her bones. Ethan sat by the bed, his face haggard, watching her every moment. "Clara, you're here." Ethan stood up, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Clara waved a hand, signaling him not to wake her, but Grandma Beatrice seemed to sense her presence. Her fingers twitched, and she slowly opened her eyes. "Grandma, you're awake," Clara said, rushing to her side. When she saw who it was, a mist formed in her dull eyes. "Clara, my dear child, I held on until you came back. You've gotten so thin," she said, her voice weak but full of affection. A lump formed in Clara's throat, and she squeezed her grandmother's hand. "Grandma, I'm back. You have to get better. Remember what I told you when I was little? I said when I grew up, I would take you on a trip around the world." Clara had planned a graduation trip for her, Ethan, and his grandmother, but after everything that had happened, those plans had turned to dust. Grandma Beatrice shook her head gently. "I'm not long for this world, my dear. My only regret is that I won't get to see you two get married." Ethan glanced quickly at Clara, then lowered his head, unable to meet her gaze. Grandma Beatrice's eyes shifted to Ethan. "I know what happened to Gregory. You've been hiding it from me. I'm old, not senile. But no matter what happened between our families, you are the only granddaughter-in-law I will ever accept." With a trembling hand, she slid a jade bracelet off her wrist. Her wrist was so thin that the bracelet slipped off easily. "Grandma, I can't. You should keep it," Clara said, her voice choked with tears. Grandma Beatrice wouldn't take no for an answer and placed the bracelet on Clara's wrist. "Clara, you've had a hard life. Whether you marry Ethan or not, this bracelet is yours. A little something to remember me by." Clara nodded, her eyes filled with tears. That night, Grandma Beatrice passed away peacefully. After the funeral, Ethan asked Clara hesitantly if she would stay. Clara bit her lip. Seeing Grandma Beatrice again had awakened something soft within her. She remembered their 20 years as childhood sweethearts, Ethan kneeling before her, vowing to marry her. She remembered her parents' last wishes. Whenever she visited her father in prison, he would ask about Ethan. His biggest regret was that the affairs of their generation had affected their children's happiness. She was wavering. The memories were a beautiful trap, beckoning her back. If she just took a step back, she could return to the life she had once longed for. The ringing of her phone pulled her back to reality. It was Lucas, his voice full of excitement. "Clara, you've been accepted into the Paris College of Design, and you got a full scholarship." In that moment, Clara knew what she had to do. She had to live freely. She looked at Ethan, her eyes filled with a new resolve. "I'm going back to Paris to finish my studies." When Clara returned to Paris, Lucas was back from his business trip. He didn't pressure her to make a decision, but quietly helped her get settled, never overstepping his bounds. Clara was incredibly grateful. She couldn't make any promises to Lucas now. It wouldn't be fair to him to agree to a life together when her heart was still entangled with someone else. She dove into her busy and fulfilling university life. To her surprise, Ethan gave up control of the Hawthorne group and followed her to Paris. Every day, Clara would find a letter in her mailbox. The envelope was always adorned with a lavender design, so she knew who it was from. But she never opened them. She would simply take them and throw them in the trash can in her front yard. She knew Ethan was watching from a distance, and she wanted him to give up. Clara thrived at school. Her professors and classmates adored her, and her work often received high praise. A new and wonderful life was unfolding before her. She began to regain the cheerful, confident demeanor of her university days. Life in a foreign country was slowly healing the wounds that had festered for 3 years. One day, she opened her mailbox and found it empty. A strange feeling of emptiness washed over her, but she quickly dismissed it. This was what she wanted, wasn't it? In the corner of the mailbox was a flyer. Curious, Clara took it out. It was for the grand opening of a flower shop next to her school. Clara had always loved flowers, and the flyer was beautifully designed. The owner clearly had good taste. She decided to check it out. But when she stepped inside, she saw a familiar figure. The small shop was filled to the brim with flowers, a chaotic but charming mess. Ethan, dressed in a simple t-shirt and pants with a large apron tied around his waist, was carefully trimming flower stems with a pair of shears, his clothes dusted with pollen and leaves. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting a shadow from his long eyelashes onto his face. Clara was stunned. It had been a long time since she had seen this side of Ethan. The powerful CEO of Sterling City had become a humble flower shop owner. He straightened up and gave her a brilliant smile. "Welcome to my flower shop, beautiful lady." "Ethan, what are you doing?" "What about the company?" Clara asked, confused. Ethan shook his head with a smile. "Clara, after everything that's happened, I finally realized what I want, and you are more important to me than anything else. I've left the company in the hands of my subordinates. I'll stay in Paris until you graduate. After that, whether you want to go back home or stay here, it's up to you. But wherever you are, that's where I'll be. Don't feel any pressure. I'm not forcing you to forgive me. I just hope you'll give me a chance to win you back." Before Clara could reply, Ethan placed a bouquet of flowers in her arms. It was a carefully selected bunch of lavender, beautifully wrapped, its fragrance filling the air. When Clara came to her senses, she was surprised to find herself smiling. It had been a long time since she had genuinely smiled at Ethan. Watching her smile as she sniffed the flowers, Ethan was mesmerized. He hoped he could see that beautiful smile for the rest of his life. From that day on, every time Clara passed the flower shop on her way to school, Ethan would give her a bouquet. Her classmates gradually got to know him and would often tease her, saying they envied her for having such a handsome and romantic boyfriend. Clara would just smile and shake her head. Lucas knew Ethan was pursuing Clara again, but he was magnanimous about it. They were on a level playing field now. Let the best man win her heart. 2 months flew by, and the college announced a design competition. Clara was determined to create a piece she could be proud of. She threw herself into her work, often spending entire nights at the school library. Both Lucas and Ethan tacitly agreed not to disturb her. They knew that for Clara now, her studies were the most important thing. This was her dream, and a person pursuing their dream is always radiant. On the day of the competition, Clara presented a stunning piece and won first place, as she had hoped. Feeling elated, she walked out of the hall and received a message from Lucas. He had cooked her a feast of all her favorite dishes and had a bottle of champagne waiting to celebrate her victory at home. A small smile played on Clara's lips. Lucas was always so thoughtful. She looked up and saw Ethan waiting for her at the entrance. "Clara, I want to take you somewhere to celebrate your win." Clara paused. "Lucas is waiting for me for dinner." A shadow crossed Ethan's eyes, but he didn't give up. "Clara, just give me half an hour. I won't keep you from your date." After a moment's hesitation, Clara agreed. Ethan led her east of the school. Clara was confused. That area was just a patch of wasteland. There were no cafes or restaurants there. Where was he taking her? But she didn't ask, simply following him through a small alley and around a corner. And then, a purple tapestry unfolded before her. A field of lavender stretched out where the wasteland had been. The setting sun filtered through thin clouds, bathing the purple sea in a golden light, making every blossom glow. Clara was speechless. It was like something out of a dream. She knew the climate in Paris was not ideal for lavender. She couldn't imagine how much effort Ethan must have put in to cultivate such a large field. Ethan took her hand and led her to the center of the field. He took out a ring box from his pocket and slowly knelt down. He opened the box. Clara recognized it immediately. It was the same one from 3 years ago. After she had burned all their mementos, she had forgotten to clean up the ashes. She never thought Ethan would have retrieved the ring. "Clara, you are my friend, my love, the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. The days I spent with you were the best of my life. I know I hurt you, and I am willing to spend a lifetime making it up to you. I want to spend every day of the rest of my life loving, respecting, and protecting you." The sun dipped below the horizon, taking the last of the light with it. Just then, a low rumble sounded. Clara looked up. The sky erupted in a brilliant display of fireworks. Dazzling sparks streaked across the night like shooting stars, illuminating the world in a kaleidoscope of colors, weaving a dream from their youth. After 3 years, the fireworks were finally for her again. As Clara watched the fireworks bloom against the night sky, breathing in the faint scent of lavender, tears streamed down her face. Her heart was in turmoil. Why couldn't this have happened sooner? 3 years ago, she would have joyfully thrown herself into his arms, kissed his cheeks, and shouted. "I do." 1 year ago, she would have wept with joy, embraced him, and reconciled without a second thought. Even 3 months ago, after some hesitation, she probably would have accepted his proposal. But now, everything was different. The events of the past few months had made the decision agonizingly difficult. Seeing her silence, Ethan, who had been prepared for this, continued. "Clara, do you know the language of lavender? It means waiting for your love. You waited for me for 3 years. I am willing to wait a lifetime for you to love me again. I'm not asking you to accept my proposal right now, but I want you to know that whenever you turn around, I will always be here." Ethan didn't force her to take the ring. He draped his jacket over her shoulders and walked her home. After her celebratory dinner with Lucas, Clara returned to her room, her mind heavy with thoughts. She tossed and turned all night, unable to make a decision. Whether she said yes or no, the thought of either choice felt like a knife in her heart. She decided to just take things one day at a time. For the next few days, Ethan continued his routine, giving her a bouquet of flowers every day and silently walking her home after her late classes. He didn't say anything that would make her uncomfortable, just a simple, smiling greeting. He maintained a calm, respectful distance. Clara gradually grew accustomed to his presence, to the flowers that appeared with his smile each day. When her classmates teased them, she no longer rushed to deny it, but would simply smile and smell the lavender in her hand. It felt like she was back in university again. One day, Clara went to class as usual, but was surprised not to see Ethan on her way. A strange feeling settled in her gut, but she quickly told herself that he was probably just busy at the shop. She took out her notebook, ready to listen to the lecture, when the classroom door was suddenly thrown open. "Clara Rivers, get your ass out here." Clara looked up from her book in shock. When she saw who it was, she froze. It was Sabrina Shaw. She was in Paris. Sabrina scanned the room and quickly spotted Clara. She stormed over, spewing a stream of curses. "You shameless homewrecker, how dare you seduce my man and ruin my family? Did you make Ethan call off our wedding? He gave up his family, his company, all to play house with you in Paris. What kind of black magic did you use on him? I'm going to kill you, you little lowlife." Most of the international students didn't understand what Sabrina was saying and just stared in confusion. But there were many Chinese students in the class, and their ears perked up. Whispers began to spread. "I have seen her with 2 different guys. Both are super handsome. Wow, she's really something. Not only 2-timing, but she's also a mistress. The wife showing up to cause a scene in class. This is so juicy, I'm posting this on the student gossip forum." Sabrina strode up to Clara, grabbed a handful of her hair, and yanked her out of her seat. Clara cried out in pain. The professor, though confused, saw that the intruder was hostile and attacking his student. He shouted for her to stop and asked some students to call campus security. A few of Clara's friends rushed forward to pull Sabrina off, prying her fingers from Clara's hair. Sabrina threw them off and yelled, I'm pregnant, I'd like to see any of you lay a hand on me, do you have a death wish? It was only then that Clara noticed the slight swell of a baby bump under Sabrina's loose clothing. Seeing the look of shock on Clara's face, Sabrina smirked triumphantly. Surprised, Clara, I bet he didn't tell you, did he? Clara's voice trembled. Whose baby is it? Sabrina snorted. Whose do you think? Ethan's, of course. Sabrina savored Clara's crestfallen expression and continued gloating. You thought Ethan loved you so much. If he really loved you, would he be having a child with another woman? I came here to take Ethan back home. I just thought I'd stop by and let your teachers and classmates know what kind of trash you really are. You ruined my wedding, sent my father to prison, and thought you could run off to another country and live in peace. Let me tell you, not a chance. If I'm not happy, you don't get to be happy either. Clara felt her whole body tremble, as if she were sinking into an endless darkness. Campus security arrived and escorted Sabrina away. As she was being led out, Sabrina was still screaming. Clara Rivers, I'm the one who won in the end. I'm going to be Mrs. Hawthorne in Ethan's heart. You're nothing. After the chaos subsided, the professor resumed his lecture. But Clara couldn't focus. She asked the professor for sick leave and, under the strange gazes of her classmates, stumbled out of the classroom. When she got home, Lucas greeted her with a worried expression. Clara, what are all these posts online? What did Ethan do? Clara opened her phone to see the trending topics, her lips trembling. Hawthorne Group heir abandons pregnant fiancée for first love in Paris. Ethan Hawthorne's fiancée, in tears after engagement, is called off. Clara Rivers, the homewrecker. Clara clicked on a video. It was Sabrina, crying to the camera. She wasn't wearing her usual heavy makeup. Instead, she had a natural look that, along with her simple, form-fitting clothes, accentuated her baby bump. She sobbed as she spoke. Ethan and I were supposed to get married this month, but then his first love, Clara Rivers, showed up and completely bewitched him. He insisted on calling off the wedding, abandoning his child and his company, all to run off to Paris to be with her. He said she was his one true love. I don't care what happens to me, but my poor baby, to not have a father before it's even born, Sabrina cried piteously, looking like the perfect victim. She held up a stack of photos of her and Ethan, all looking happy together. The comments below the video were filled with vitriol directed at Clara. What unforgettable first love. She's just a shameless, two-faced schemer. She kept this guy on the hook, and the second he was about to get married, she swooped in to ruin it. I've read this story 1,000,000 times. A scumbag and a slut, a match made in heaven. Go, original fiancé, you're better off without him. We can't let them get away with this. Someone needs to make these two pay. Does anyone have the homewrecker's personal info? Clara wanted to defend herself, to say that she was Ethan's real girlfriend, not some gold digger as the internet claimed. But she didn't even have a single photo of them together. The proof of their love had long since turned to ash. Clara scrolled down and saw a new post, uploaded just 10 minutes ago. It was a video of Sabrina grabbing her hair in the classroom, screaming at her. The caption read, "Wife confronts mistress, front row seats to the drama. So exciting." The post was geotagged at the Paris College of Design. Lucas was trying to find the right words to comfort her when Clara put down her phone and suddenly bolted out the door. She had to find Ethan and demand an explanation. She ran all the way to his flower shop and stopped, bent over, hands on her knees, gasping for breath. When she finally caught her breath, she took a deep breath and went to push open the door. But in the next second, she froze. The shop was locked. Through the glass, she could see it was empty, save for the masses of flowers blooming inside. There was no sign on the door, and a half-wrapped bouquet of lavender sat on the counter. The owner had clearly left in a hurry, without even a word. She had lost. Again, Ethan had chosen Sabrina and their child. Tears streamed silently down Clara's face. He had lied to her again. Lucas, who had followed her, arrived out of breath. Seeing the locked door, he pulled Clara into a tight embrace. A few days later, when Clara had finally composed herself enough to return to class, she was summoned by the university's admissions committee. A professor told her sternly that the admissions office had been flooded with emails about her. Some were just baseless personal attacks, questioning how the school could admit such a person. The university had ignored these, but other emails accused Clara of falsifying her application materials, claiming she was not qualified to attend the Paris College of Design. The university had a zero-tolerance policy for plagiarism and academic dishonesty. The matter had already caused a stir on campus, with many demanding a full investigation. Although they couldn't yet determine if Clara had done anything wrong, out of an abundance of caution, they had to suspend her classes until the investigation was complete. Clara understood immediately. This was the work of those self-righteous netizens trying to vent their anger. Sabrina, seeing the public outrage, must have accidentally leaked all of her personal information. She could handle the online attacks, being called a homewrecker. But now they were targeting her school, her last sanctuary. Her final project was halfway done, and final exams were approaching. If she couldn't complete her coursework, she wouldn't pass, which would affect her graduation. Anxiety gripped her. She stood before the professor, her voice trembling as she explained over and over that there was nothing wrong with her application materials. But no matter how she argued, the university stood by its decision to suspend her and her scholarship. Her protests were futile. Clara left the office, dejected, her heart feeling as if it were being squeezed by an invisible hand, unable to breathe. Was her dream going to end here? Clara felt several pairs of eyes on her, followed by whispers. The voices were faint, but she could hear them clearly. Schemer, homewrecker, shameless, fake goddess. The words made her face burn with shame. The campus that had once held all her dreams now felt like a living hell. Clara covered her ears and ran all the way home. She collapsed onto her bed and burst into tears. The last boat on the river of hope had sunk. She had thought that by leaving Ethan, she could take back control of her life. But in the end, her fate was still in someone else's hands. Clara didn't leave her room for days. Lucas grew worried. But every time he knocked, she would answer, saying she just needed to be alone and not to worry. One day, however, no matter how much Lucas knocked, there was no response. He pressed his ear to the door. It was deathly silent inside. When Lucas finally broke down the door, he saw an empty bottle of painkillers on the nightstand and Clara, lying on the bed, looking as if she were merely asleep. Clara felt as if she were in a dream. She was crossing a strange bridge over a raging river. The other side was shrouded in mist. Suddenly, she heard Ethan's voice behind her, calling her name desperately, begging her not to go. Clara stopped, torn between moving forward and turning back. When she woke up, her world was white. Her eyes slowly adjusted to the light, and she realized she was in a hospital. An IV was in her arm, and a pulse oximeter was clipped to her finger. Clara looked down and saw Lucas slumped over the side of her bed, asleep. He clearly hadn't rested in days. His face was gaunt, his expression tense. Even in sleep, his brow was furrowed. Her limbs felt numb. She twitched her fingers slightly, but the small movement was enough to wake him from his light sleep. His eyes were bloodshot. "Clara, you're finally awake." Lucas was both relieved and worried. He quickly called a doctor to check on her. After an examination, the doctor said she was recovering well and could be discharged in a few days. "It's a good thing you brought her in when you did," the doctor remarked. Lucas let out a long sigh of relief, the tension in his face finally easing. Seeing how exhausted he was, Clara felt a wave of guilt. "Lucas, I'm so sorry for worrying you." Lucas shook his head and took her hand. "Clara, that's not what's important. What hurts me the most is that you wanted to give up on your life. You have so many possibilities, such a bright future ahead of you. Is it really worth it for Ethan?" Clara gave a bitter smile. "Lucas, I wasn't actually trying to kill myself. I had a terrible headache for days, and I couldn't sleep. I took some painkillers, but they didn't work. In a moment of desperation, I just took half the bottle." She laughed at herself. Even if it wasn't for Ethan, she was still hurting herself because of him. "Clara, how can you still be so foolish? Does he care if you hurt yourself?" Hearing that she hadn't intended to take her own life, Lucas finally relaxed completely. "Regardless, don't ever do something so foolish again. You can't play with your health like that." "By the way, while you were unconscious, the school called. They said after a thorough review, your application materials are fine. You can go back to class." Clara's eyes lit up. She could continue her studies. A surge of energy flowed through her. She wanted to get out of bed and run to school right then and there, but Lucas gently pushed her back down. "Be good. Your body still needs to recover. With your talent, a few missed days won't matter. You need to be well to work well." Clara reluctantly lay back down, but asked him to bring her textbooks to the hospital. She couldn't fall too far behind. Seeing her determination, Lucas agreed. On the day of her discharge, Clara looked at Lucas, who was busy taking care of everything for her, and hesitated. But Lucas seemed to know what was coming. "Clara, just say what you need to say." "I'm prepared." Clara paused, then said tentatively, "Lucas, I think I should move out." A look of sadness crossed Lucas's face. "Clara, have you chosen him after all?" Clara shook her head vehemently. "After this, I've thought it through completely. I'm not getting back together with Ethan. Being with him just drains the life out of me." "Lucas, I've seen everything you've done for me these past few weeks, and I'm so grateful. But gratitude isn't love. Right now, I have no desire for a relationship. I just want to finish my degree and find a job that can support me." Lucas said anxiously, "Even if we're just friends, you can still stay here. I can't rest easy with you living out there alone." "Lucas, it wouldn't be fair to you for me to stay. I can't take advantage of your kindness when I know we can only be friends. And you don't have to worry about my safety. I found an apartment near the school with good security. And since it's close to campus, there are always security patrols nearby." After a long silence, Lucas sighed. "It seems I can't convince you to stay." Clara set a date to move and began packing. She didn't have much. Her scholarship was limited, and she couldn't accept Lucas spending too much money on her, so she had been frugal. While sorting through her important documents, she came across her father's pocket watch. The memory of the man who gave it back to her made her pause. Just then, her phone rang. She answered it. A familiar voice came through the receiver. "Clara, it's me." Ethan sounded exhausted. Clara was about to hang up, but he seemed to anticipate it. "Clara, please don't hang up, just give me 10 minutes. "Clara, it was all Sabrina's scheme. She tricked me into going back to the country." It turned out that on the day Sabrina caused a scene at the school, Ethan had received a call from his assistant back home. The assistant told him there was a serious problem at the company that required his personal attention. Not wanting to worry Clara and thinking he could resolve it quickly, Ethan had returned without telling her. But the moment he stepped into the company headquarters, he was ambushed and held captive, his phone taken away. The culprits were all people Richard Shaw had planted in the company. If Ethan continued to investigate Richard, they would all be exposed eventually. So, at Sabrina's instigation, they had decided to strike first, forcing Ethan to relinquish control of the company. Meanwhile, Sabrina had created a media storm online, turning public opinion against Ethan and using his chaotic personal life to make the board of directors lose faith in him, further weakening his authority. Fortunately, Ethan had been cautious. Before he left, he had instructed a few trusted executives to investigate if they lost contact with him. After some maneuvering, Ethan was finally released. The first thing he did was call Clara. "Clara, just give me a few more days. Once I've sorted things out at the company, I'll come back to Paris to find you." Listening to his explanation, Clara felt a wave of exhaustion. "You don't have to come back, Ethan. You don't belong here. If we continue to be together, we'll just destroy each other. I don't want anyone disturbing my new life, especially not Sabrina." Ethan asked anxiously, "What do you mean, Clara? What did Sabrina do to you?" Clara let out a soft laugh. "Mr. Hawthorne, it seems you really don't know anything. You should take a look at the internet." After hanging up, Clara continued packing. Now that she had said what needed to be said, she felt uneasy about continuing to accept Lucas's hospitality and wanted to move out as soon as possible. On moving day, Lucas gave Clara a tight hug and said softly, "Clara, we'll always be good friends. If you ever need anything, just let me know." Clara nodded gratefully. Without Lucas, she didn't know where she would be. He had helped her settle in a foreign country and find her purpose again. She would forever be in his debt. Clara's new home was a small one-bedroom apartment. Though tiny, it was finally a space of her own, and she was content. She changed the curtains and put fresh linens on the bed, then sank into it, thinking about how she would furnish her little home. Next year, she could work as a teaching assistant for her professor and take on some freelance design projects to earn extra income. Life was going to get better. At school, some people still whispered about her, but Clara had learned to ignore them. As long as she could continue her studies, nothing else mattered. Besides, some of her classmates had stood by her firmly. They trusted what they saw with their own eyes more than the sensationalized stories online. Since she had started school, Clara had always been hardworking and kind. They didn't believe she was the two-faced schemer the internet made her out to be. Just as Clara was beginning to forget about her troubles, the one person she didn't want to see appeared before her again. "Clara, I went to Lucas's house to find you, and he said you had moved out. Did you turn him down? Did you decide to be with me?" Ethan's voice was filled with an irrepressible joy. "Clara, I'm back, and this time I'm never leaving you again." Clara looked at his excited face and shook her head gently. "I'm not going to be with Lucas, but I'm not planning on being with you either, Ethan. We both have our own lives to live. It's better if we don't bother each other." Ethan immediately grew anxious. "Clara, are you still angry about Sabrina? I've taken care of it. Sabrina has been sent to prison for extortion." Clara looked up. "Isn't she the mother of your child? How could you bear to do that?" Ethan's face turned crimson. He spoke quickly. "Clara, don't misunderstand. We never slept together. That child wasn't mine. I never thought Sabrina would come looking for you. She must have gotten your information from my assistant. I know this has caused you a lot of trouble, but I've already cleared things up online. No one will call you a homewrecker anymore." Ethan handed her his phone, showing her the recent trending topics. Ethan, who had always shunned the camera, had personally recorded a clarification video. He started from the beginning, talking about how he and Clara had been childhood sweethearts, how their conflict had arisen, and how he had discovered the true culprit behind his father's betrayal, as well as Sabrina's infidelity. During her relationship with Ethan, Sabrina had been involved with several other men. Finally, Ethan presented a DNA test, proving that the child Sabrina had been carrying was not his. The comments below the video had completely shifted, now vilifying Sabrina. Some netizens even offered sincere apologies to Clara, saying they had been swept up in the anger and had lost their judgment. It turns out Clara was the real victim all along. Her father was framed, her boyfriend didn't believe her, and she was cyberbullied by the entire internet. Sabrina is so manipulative, twisting the truth, making false accusations. Prison is too good for her. I hope Ethan and Clara get back together. They have over 20 years of history. It would be a shame to end it like this. Get back together. After everything Ethan did, one apology erases it all. This world is way too forgiving of men. Clara read the comments, but her heart remained calm. After what had happened to her father, she often found herself wondering, is justice still justice when it comes too late? Clara asked, a little confused. Sabrina's baby wasn't born yet. How did you get a DNA test? Sabrina herself wasn't sure who the father was. She knew she wouldn't be able to explain it after the baby was born, so she secretly had an abortion and planned to frame me, saying I had caused her to miscarry. That way, with the baby gone, I wouldn't even have a chance to defend myself. Coincidentally, I know the director of that hospital. He helped me get a sample for a DNA test, and that's how the truth came out. Clara nodded in understanding. Ethan, thank you for doing all this, for clearing my name. But I still can't be with you. Ethan said anxiously. Clara, why? You still can't forgive me? Clara shook her head. Actually, I stopped being angry at you a long time ago. I used to think it was because I still loved you. Now I realize it's because none of it matters to me anymore. When I was in the hospital getting my stomach pumped after taking too many painkillers, I had a realization. Being trapped in these petty dramas of love and hate is a waste of a beautiful life. There are so many other things in life worth pursuing. Why should I be stuck on someone who hurt me so deeply, unable to move on? Right now, I just want to finish my studies and find a job I love. Maybe in Paris, maybe in Spain, or maybe in Egypt. I want to see the world while I'm young, to live the life I want to live. So I'm not going to be with you or with anyone else until I've found myself. Looking into Clara's determined eyes, Ethan suddenly felt small. Clara was moving on to a bigger world, and he was just a small part of her past. He said, his voice strained, Clara, I meant what I said before. I will always wait for you. No matter where you go, if you ever look back, I'll be there. Clara shrugged. That's your choice. I won't interfere, but you have to understand, waiting doesn't guarantee an outcome. Ethan looked at her steadily. I know, but for you, it's worth it. When Clara returned to school, her classmates had all seen Ethan's clarification video online. Many of them came to apologize to her for misunderstanding, but some still remained skeptical and kept their distance. Clara accepted all the apologies with a smile. As for those who still didn't believe her, she didn't bother to explain. She was stronger now. Other people's opinions were just noise, unable to hurt her anymore. Clara continued to pour all her energy into her studies. While maintaining top grades, she also took every opportunity to participate in industry competitions and exhibitions. Her skills grew, and she won numerous awards both inside and outside of school, attracting the attention of some industry leaders. Before she even graduated, she had already received job offers from several well-known companies. Gradually, the voices of slander faded, replaced by admiration and envy. The classmates who had once looked down on her now vied for her friendship, asking for her help with their projects or for internship referrals. The world is always more forgiving of the strong. If you only show weakness, people will just take advantage of you. At 26, Clara had finally understood this, and thankfully, it wasn't too late. Lucas and Clara remained friends, occasionally meeting for dinner. He told her honestly that he hadn't completely let go of his feelings for her, but he was slowly moving on. He believed that one day, he would truly be over her and would find a girl who loved him with all her heart. Clara was genuinely happy for him. One's happiness should never depend entirely on another person. As for Ethan, he continued to run his flower shop. Just like before, he would try to give her a bouquet on her way to school. But Clara deliberately avoided him, so for several days, his flowers went undelivered. So he changed his method. Every morning, before she woke up, he would place a bouquet in the mailbox of her apartment. That way, every time she left her home, the first thing she would see would be her favorite flower, lavender, still glistening with morning dew. The language of lavender is waiting for your love. Ethan had resolved to spend the rest of his life waiting for Clara's love to return.